Is core strengthening good for lower back pain? Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Candy, and in this video, I'm going to tell you about if core strengthening is good for lower back pain, what the best core strengthening exercises are, what problems you should probably avoid, and some common mistakes that people usually make, plus what may be even more important than core strengthening if you want to relieve or prevent back pain. Now, if you find this video helpful, give it a like or thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of our other future videos. So first of all, is core strengthening good for back pain? Well, that's a very general question. Your core is made up of your stomach muscles, your lower back muscles, your hip muscles, and all of those work together to help stabilize your trunk or your core from your pelvis to your rib cage. So core strength can mean a lot of different things, and you can be strong in certain areas of your core and weak in other areas of your core. Furthermore, we really only utilize about 20% of our overall core strength in everyday day-to-day activities. So it's really not important that you be super strong in your core strength. It's more important that you have an adequate balance and that things are working in the proper amount, in the front and the back, from the side to the side, rather than the total overall just brute strength of the muscles. So that's the first thing. Now, second of all, what are the best core strengthening exercises to do for lower back pain? Well, if you look at the way that your core functions in everyday activities, usually it functions to stabilize your spine while you're upright. Now, if you think about typical core strengthening exercises, most of them are like sit-ups and planks and bridges and things that you do while you're laying down. And those don't really represent everyday activities that you do and the way that your core works in everyday, day-to-day functions. So the best core strengthening exercises are actually ones that mimic your everyday activities. Squats, for example, are a really good activity that you can squat in a lot of different ways. You can squat with your back rounded like that, which isn't good for it. You can squat with your back super arched like that, which also isn't good for it. And a really good core strengthening exercise is just to do squats where your spine is in a neutral position, your back's flat, and you're squatting, not super bent over, not super arched, but finding a neutral position of your spine and just squatting while trying to maintain that neutral position like that. Additionally, deadlifts. Most people think that deadlifts are bad for your back, but we do deadlifts every single day. For example, picking up a laundry basket when you go to pick it up off the floor. That's a form of a deadlift, and we need to be able to do those type of activities in everyday life. So deadlifts are a great activity for your back if you do them correctly. Again, you want to kind of maintain a neutral spine. You don't want to do a deadlift where you're super rounded like that because that puts your discs at risk. But if you're doing a deadlift like this where you have too much arch in your back, then you jam the joints together in your back, and you also put yourself at risk for straining the muscles in your back. So again, you want to keep a neutral spine position, kind of push your hips back to do a deadlift, not rounding out excessively, but kind of sticking your butt back. If you were holding a bar or holding dumbbells, almost to the point where you would fall backwards if you were to let go of that bar. And then kind of leaning back so your weight's on your heels, but you're not going backwards. And then driving your hips in underneath of you. Notice that your spine doesn't really move much. You're using your glute muscles to help do the deadlift and pushing in that way and going back that way. You can use that picking up a laundry basket, picking up, if you go to pick up your dog or a toddler, you can use it in a lot of different circumstances in everyday life. And so that's a really good core strengthening exercise as well. Now, if you look at side-to-side balance, your hips and your glutes are also part of your core. And when you do a squat or a deadlift, you're balanced from side to side. It helps balancing the front and the back muscles, but it doesn't necessarily help with balancing you from side to side. For that purpose, doing something like a lunge can be helpful. For example, if you're going to get up off the floor, that's something that people have more and more trouble with when they're getting older, whether it be because of their back or because of their knees or just the strength in their legs. That getting up from the floor can be a difficult activity for people as they age. And so a way to help strengthen your core while doing lunges is to step forward. If you're looking from the straight front to back, you want to make sure that your knee is in line with your toes. Now actually, you're going to want to focus on having it just a little bit outside of your toes, because your point of vision, your frame of reference, your eyes are going down that way. And so if it looks to you like your knee is lined up with your toes, it's actually a little bit to the inside. If it looks to you like your knee's out that way a little bit, you're probably lined up pretty well. So again, kind of trying to keep your knee in line with your toes and lunging down like that. Now, if your knee goes in front of your toes, that can be kind of hard on your knees. So you want to make sure to keep the pressure back on your heels, sitting back on the heel like that. And that helps your glute strength in the front to back plane, but it also helps in the side to side plane, controlling your lateral hip muscles, your hip abductors, your hip rotator muscles, in addition to your gluteus maximus, your butt muscles, basically. So those are the everyday functional core activities that are really, really helpful. Now, maybe you came looking to this video looking for things to actually do on the floor. For example, Pilates type exercises. Pilates exercises are great core exercises, and there's nothing wrong with doing them. In fact, we're going to be starting to offer some Pilates classes here at More for Life. But if you're looking for core strengthening exercises that you do laying on the ground, here are some common exercises that are really good for strengthening your core. They help you build muscles in equal balance, and I'll also give you some of the common errors that people make. So if you're looking for kind of typical core exercises, core strengthening exercises that you do on the floor, planks are probably my #1 favorite. And that's because you're really using the muscle isometrically like you use it in everyday function again. You don't do a lot of things in everyday life where you're doing a sit-up or a crunch type of movement. You stabilize the muscles isometrically, meaning you're not moving, you're contracting the muscles while they're staying still. And that's really what a plank is for. Now, to do a plank, you can get down on your hands and knees. If you're just starting out, doing them like that is a good way to start out, where you don't have the full weight of your body, but eventually you want to try to build up to where you're doing a plank like that. Now, it's important to try to keep your spine in a neutral position in this range. You don't have to be a plank from shoulders to toes. And the reason I say that is because some people will think they have to be straight from shoulders to toes, and so they'll sag down like that, but there your back's kind of arched. It's extended too much in that direction. Also, you don't want your butt way high up in the air. You want to try to bring it down as close as you can while still keeping your spine neutral. Now, notice I'm probably tented up here a little bit, but that's because my hip flexors are tight. If I tried to go down further, my back would arch. So again, it's more important to keep your trunk neutral than it is to be a straight line from here to your toes. Doing it from your elbows and look a little bit more like this. Not like that, not like that, but kind of keeping the trunk neutral. And so those are planks. Again, probably my favorite core exercise if you're thinking about exercising down on the ground. Now, what about sit-ups? Sit-ups, the traditional sit-ups, are actually a horrible core exercise. And the reason for that is when you do a full sit-up, sitting all the way up, it uses your hip flexor muscles more than it actually uses your abdominal muscles. That your abdominal muscles, your rectus abdominis right here, and your oblique abdominals that run in this range, run from basically your rib cage or your sternum down to your pelvis. They don't have anything to do with this area. They don't move your hips in that direction. So when you're doing a full sit-up, you're actually using your hip flexor muscles much, much more than you're using your abdominal muscles. And that's not a good thing for your back, because the hip flexors, particularly the psoas portion of your hip flexors, comes and attaches to the front of your spine, and it creates huge amounts of compression on the discs and the joints in your back. So when you're utilizing your psoas muscles, you're creating tons and tons of compression on the joints in your lower back. So if you want to do sit-ups, you don't want to do the full sit-ups where you're coming up like that, because that uses more of the hip flexors or the psoas and puts your back in a position where it's getting a lot of compression. It's better to do crunches where you're laying on the ground and just crunching up a slight bit. Again, kind of thinking sternum to pelvis is the motion that you would use to work the abdominal muscles. Or if you're thinking more about the oblique muscles, rib cage to opposite side of the pelvis. Not a full sit-up, like trying to touch your elbow to your opposite knee, but again, rib cage to the opposite side of the pelvis. Like that, or going the other direction like that. Now what about leg raises, where you raise your legs up in the air and then lower them to the ground? That's actually a great exercise, and it works the lower abdominals more so than the upper abdominals. And the lower abdominals are typically weaker muscles in people who have back pain. But that's a very difficult exercise to do. If you're doing the traditional leg raises where you raise your legs up like this and then lower them down to the ground, if you notice your back, and I'm kind of exaggerating it there just for the point, but if it starts to arch up off the ground, that compresses the joints in your back together. So you don't want to lower to the point where your back starts to arch up the ground. Doing it a little bit more, not over exaggerated, it would look kind of like this. But you want to keep your legs flat, or your lower back flat, contract your abdominal muscles, and then lower, 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 lower. It gets pretty hard for me right about here. I can probably hold it to about there. Past that, I'll start to lose it, and my back will pop up. So it doesn't matter how far you go. And in fact, if you've got kind of weaker lower abdominal muscles, this may be all you can do, just a couple degrees going down like that. Now, if you can only go a few degrees with your leg lowering, you're probably better off starting with an easier exercise. For example, pulling your knees up to your chest and then lowering one at a time, and the other, again, trying to keep your lower back flat on the ground. A common PT exercise is called the dead bug exercise, where you're doing kind of sort of that same thing like that. But it's probably easiest just to learn it. Doing your legs, and then opposite leg, and opposite leg. And then you can progress to 2 legs at a time, trying to keep the back flat, and then eventually you're doing the full leg raise, which again, right about there, that gets kind of hard. So those are the planks and the crunches and the leg lowering exercises. Now, what about core exercises for your lower back muscles? A common core exercise for your lower back muscles is called the bird dog. People have probably seen it, an exercise where you kind of hunt like a hunting dog, like that, and like that. That's another common physical therapy exercise for core strengthening. But there's some really common errors that people make with that as well. One of those common errors is that your back, again, should stay fairly flat. It shouldn't arch too much down this way, it shouldn't arch too much that way, and it shouldn't rotate excessively. Now, if you're getting a lot of arch in your back when you're doing that exercise, or if you're tipping one way or tipping the other, or like that, you're also not stabilizing your trunk well. You're not getting good core stability or good core control or even really good core strengthening. So trying to keep yourself in more of a neutral position, not all the way down, not all the way up. Find a happy medium, and then only raise the arm and the leg up to the point where you can keep your back fairly still and your trunk is staying still while your legs are moving. Notice that might limit your range of motion. You may not be able to go all the way up like that, but if your goal is core strengthening, not just looking like a bird dog, then you're probably better off to limit the range to what your core strength or your core control will allow you to do. Now, if you would like to learn some things that are more important than core strengthening, it's actually more about utilizing your core in everyday life, the way that you use it when you're squatting to pick things up, the way that you're standing like that, when you're working, standing in line at the grocery store, cooking, chopping things, the way that you walk. If you walk with your back really arched up like that, it's going to jam the joints together in your lower back. And those everyday functional activities, the way you use your core in everyday activities, is way, way, way more important. If you think about how many hours there are in the day, and if you're a really good patient or you're a really good exerciser, and you do core exercises for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour a day, there's still 23 other hours in the day. And what you do in those other 23 hours is way, way, way more important than what you do when you're doing your core strengthening exercises. So learning how to live those other 23 hours of your day better is really what we focus on more here at More for Life. And if you'd like some more help for back pain, give us a call or click one of the buttons below this video and get in touch, and we'd be happy to help you out. And if you would like some more information about core strengthening, learn about our Pilates and other wellness classes. So thank you for listening to this video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, give it a like or thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of our other future videos.